So I have been receiving a lot of comments debating whether or not to just emulate a GameCube instead of buying a Switch 2 with the expansion pack. And today I plan on taking an objective approach to compare and contrast this exact issue. Today I plan to go over what you need and the price for emulation, the visuals and upscaling, and other features such as online play, and the legality of emulation in the USA. And Nintendo, if you're watching this, please watch the entire video before forcing me to take down this video. FBI, open up! Because this video doesn't teach anyone how to emulate anything.
Okay.
It's just a comparison video, and I talk about the legality of emulation in this video. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, without further ado, let's get started. So let's talk about what you need in order to emulate a GameCube game on the Switch 2. Well, very short list. You need a Switch 2 and the expansion pack, which is $50 a year. However, sadly, that means you're only going to start out with 3 games that released on launch, which is Zelda the Wind Waker, F-Zero GX, and Soul Calibur 2. With promises of a bunch more games in the future. And let's face it, those promised games will get expensive if you do not emulate them somehow. Some of them costing up to $200 for one game if you were to play it on the original hardware. Now for free emulation, there's going to be multiple ways to do it. However, for this video, I am focusing on emulating GameCube games on a PC, not a Steam Deck, phone, or other console or device. This is largely because later in the video, I'm going to be talking about upscaling and downloading mods for the emulated games, which can be done on other hardware, yes, but it's going to be easier on a PC. Now, before we talk about price, let's talk about knowledge and expertise with emulation. If you know nothing about emulation, then let's face it, it will take a good bit of time to learn how to download, and because you do not know what you're doing, you are being cautious to make sure you're not downloading any malware, how to download the game separately, or how to rip the game data off of the disk that you own. Once you finally have the game on your PC, you have to learn where to drag the games into the right folders and make sure that the files are in the right format. Then you're going to have to learn how to go through the emulator's settings, because that maybe something went wrong and the game is not playing right, or the keybinds are wrong for your controller. And later in this video, I'm going to talk about how some how-to videos about emulation and how to download emulators and stuff have actually been taken down by Nintendo. So let's face it, there's a steep learning curve when it comes to how to emulate if you've never done it before. But if you have done it before and have experience in it, what may take multiple hours for a newbie will take 5 minutes for someone who has done it before. However, if you buy a Switch 2, it is a much smoother experience. You can game in the matter of seconds, no matter your level of knowledge and expertise in emulation. With that out of the way, what you're going to need at minimum in order to emulate GameCube games and later add upscaling and mods to these GameCube games for a good PC, according to Dolphin Emulator's website and my other research, your processor needs to be any i7 with 4 cores or better. Your graphics card is going to be a 1070, and I also read it suggests to have at least 4 gigs of RAM. Now, you might be able to get away with an i5 and a 660 GPU. However, if you do that, then you won't really be able to upscale very much. And of course, you're going to need the rest of the PC as well. So now you're going to need to buy a motherboard, storage solution like an SSD, power supply, and then a case for your desktop PC. And then you're going to need a Windows 10 license, which is like $100 unless it came with your PC when you bought it. So we're like already at $565 estimated on a desktop tower, and if you throw in some cheap peripherals like a mouse, keyboard, speakers, headset, maybe a controller, and definitely a monitor, for maybe on the low end for another $135, for a total of $700 just to emulate your GameCube games. Now do keep in mind that this is only an estimate from today, and that you might be able to get a different machine for cheaper, and then you may have to decide if you want to buy a pre-built PC or gain the experience of building a computer yourself. And then you probably want a PC for modern games too, so now you're looking at more than $700. However, I am just going to estimate the cheapest PC I can that is dedicated to emulating GameCube games that can also upscale them. But to be fair, a lot of people already have a PC or different device, so they can probably just add emulation to their pre-existing computer or device. And then going this way means you could emulate more GameCube games than are available currently on the Switch 2. Now let's take a look at upscaling on the Switch 2 and PC emulation and see which looks better. Now for the Switch 2, my best guess after doing some research would be that there is a 2x in resolution up to 900p. Now that's 1350 by 900. Now that's pretty good when considering the GameCube is originally 480p. And then if you put the Switch 2 in dock mode, it can actually upscale that to 4K. Now it's going to maintain the original frame per second cap from the original game, so that means Wind Waker is going to be 30 frames per second, where Soul Calibur 2 will be 60 frames per second. And if the game originally supported widescreen like F-Zero and Soul Calibur 2, then it's going to be supported widescreen on the Nintendo Switch 2. If it did not support widescreen such as the Wind Waker, then it's not supported as widescreen on the Switch 2. So now let's move on over and talk about upscaling with the PC that we mentioned earlier. So what I think I would be able to do is maybe get 3x out of this PC, bringing it to 1080p. And without modding, I will be matching the frames per second from the original game. However, some games have mods where you will actually be able to exceed the frame per second cap. And of course, you'll be able to do widescreen if the game originally supported it. But if it doesn't have widescreen, then you can actually force stretch it to fit the entire screen. However, this distorts the image and, well, things become stretched. Or if you learn how to download mods, the games without widescreen support can gain widescreen support with much less distortion as there would have been if you stretched it out. Now let's talk about other features such as online play. For the Switch 2, did you guys know that if the game originally was split screen, then you'll actually be able to play that game online with a friend? It's all already built into the Switch 2 with a smooth experience. Also, I want to note that we've only been looking at GameCube emulation on the Switch 2 up until this point, which is only available on the Switch 2 with a $50 a year subscription. However, did you know that the Switch 1 and Switch 2 also had a $20 per year subscription option that would give you access to select NES, SNES, and Game Boy games? Not only that, but with the $50 subscription, you'd get all that, plus the Game Boy Advance selection of games, the N64, Sega Genesis. Also, you get free DLC and upgrade packs like for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC and Breath of the Wild upgrade packs. However, let's go ahead and move back to the PC emulation and let's chat about that a little bit. Now, you could theoretically download unlimited games and emulate PlayStation, Nintendo, and Xbox games. However, I have a warning about that we're going to talk about later in the legality section of this video. But for the games that you emulate, if it has split screen online, then you can find a mod and download and install it, and your friend will need to download and install it as well. Now, another positive thing would be that you can play more than what Nintendo offers. So if there's some custom game or game mode for the game that someone made a mod for, you would be able to play that mod. Or if you want to homebrew your own mod in the game, you would be able to. On the Switch 2, you're not going to be able to. But with the Switch 2, what you will get is if something messes up, you'll have Nintendo's support because you'll be using their licensed product, so they'll help you out with any issues you may have. If you run into an issue with emulation, you're going to have to work with a community of people, and it's normally a pretty positive experience talking to people on Reddit. However, it can be kind of hard to figure out your very niche problems that you might encounter. Before I start talking about this, please note that I am not a lawyer. This is only my current understanding of how all this works in the USA. Now, you may have noticed that Nintendo doesn't like emulation. They're always cracking down on websites that offer emulations, that hold ROMs and things like that. In fact, in January just this year, Nintendo went after and was successful at getting YouTube and other websites to take down emulation tutorial videos revolving around how to mod and get new emulation games on the Game & Watch. Or when they took out Ryujinx in 2024 and stopped them from emulating Switch 1 games. And now they're even banning people who use the MIG switches in their Switch 2, just like they did to Scatterbrain on YouTube, if you guys want to learn more about that scenario. Now, let's talk about the legality. For example, Mario Kart Double Dash. I have it right here, right? My understanding is that if you own the game, I own the game, and you rip the game data off of your own copy of the disc to create a ROM, and then maintain ownership of the disc, that falls under right to make archival copies or backups, which is for the purpose of safeguarding against loss or damage of the original program. And then if you were ever to sell or get rid of the original disc, then the ROM must go with the new owner or be destroyed. So that would mean sharing copies of a ROM is illegal. However, laws also vary by country, so make sure you know the law in your area. And then the software to make ROMs out of your own GameCube games can be done on a Wii or GameCube. All you need to do is hack it with a Wii homebrew software. Sorry that I currently don't have any videos on that. And then obviously if you own a Switch 2 with the expansion pack subscription, then you're not infringing on any copyright laws. And if you had any issues with it, Nintendo support would gladly help you out. But hopefully there's a lawsuit soon with Nintendo, so that way there will be clearer copyright laws than there are now, and we'll be able to get clarity on whether or not Nintendo is abusing or overreaching using the copyright laws. So in summary, guys, what I think is that the Switch 2 emulation is just easier and for sure legal, but emulation on a PC gets you unlimited games, it gets you homebrew mods, but there's a steeper learning curve with it. Please let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about all this. What is your plans with the future of Nintendo games? And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, God bless. Peace. Also, I wanted to note that we have only been looking